of the year. And that's exciting, isn't it? Give that a cheeky like as well. Yes, he is, Tag, yeah. Still married to Jerry Halliwell, Jerry Horner, as she's now known. Look, I'm not the biggest Christian Horner fan, but the problem is, and I've been guilty of this to a certain extent as well, and I'll take my, blame for my part of that. People get wrapped up in all the rumors and stuff that they hear, and the reality is a lot of it hasn't been factual. That's the truth. Reporters from De Telegraaf in Dutch press were reporting that, there was all sorts of sexual allegations against him. And then after the reports come out, it's been claimed that that wasn't the case. So sadly, a lot of misinformation has been spread, and it's hard to filter all that out for the real, truthful information. That's the truth. The actual race is on Saturday this week, Devil. So you said, is it Friday or Sunday? It's in between the 2 days you thought it was. Qualifying is tomorrow. The race is on Saturday. That is for this weekend and next weekend. And so, yes, very much welcome to 2024. Well, no, but what I mean is, a lot of people don't like Christian Horner as a person. That's fine. If you've got information about him or his character that makes you not want to like him, fine. I'm not going to try and convince anyone to like someone. It is what it is. But in this instance, I think the problem is Red Bull haven't really been transparent about exactly what he was even accused of. Supposedly aggressive management style, but no information has been provided about what that was or what the accusation was. And obviously, they want to protect the person who's made the complaint, which I understand. But, people are going to, sadly, without actual information, people are just going to base it on rumors and all sorts and conjecture. Yeah, I mean, the question is whether whatever he's done, whether it be an aggressive management style, speaking down someone, whatever it is, I know all you can do is accept that an external barrister has grilled him for 8 hours, gone through 100 pieces of evidence and determined that there wasn't a case. All we can do is accept that. He was spoken to by this barrister for 8 hours. I mean, I don't think you can accuse Red Bull of not being thorough. I know some people will still say that it's been swept under the rug. And honestly, I can't say that it hasn't been or has been, because like I said, there's just not enough information, is there? Yeah, but in fairness, I'll say this, right? If someone had accused me of an aggressive management style, I wouldn't step down either. Because if I was adamant I hadn't done anything wrong, I wouldn't step down. If it was of a more serious nature, i.e. the claim was of sexual misconduct, I think he would have been made to step down. But as that wasn't the case now, I think that's why he wasn't made to step down. Because the claim against him wasn't serious enough to make him leave the role. And I'm quite a stubborn person. If I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, as he believed he hadn't, I wouldn't step down either. Not from that job. So I can see this from a devil's advocate standpoint, And again, this goes to the point we don't know what he was accused of. And so there's plenty of jobs where someone has a complaint against them that doesn't warrant them being removed from the job. Do you see what I mean? I think if you look at it objectively, it all boils down to what the complaint was. And that is the information we don't have. So it's very hard to make a real judgment on all of the pieces when you're missing the biggest piece of all. No, I agree in fairness, but the question is, why should he be removed from the role if... Just, you see what I'm saying? There's a devil's advocate thing here. There's plenty of situations in jobs where people are investigated or looked at for something where they're not removed from their roles, you know? It depends on the seriousness of it, doesn't it? And this is what I'm saying. The fact that he wasn't removed from the job suggests that it wasn't that level of seriousness, if that makes sense. So, you know, I don't know. Like I say, this is all conjecture. It's all conjecture for all of us. But yeah, I don't think it was transparent enough. Nowhere near transparent enough. It just wasn't clear what the hell was going on, I don't think. But there we go. There we go. That's Red Bull for you. Well, there was previously a report that the person who made the accusation against him had been dressed down by Horner for performance issues. Again, that can't be proven. This is just rumours floating around there. And so there's all sorts of these little nodes popping up here and there without any sort of, you know, proof linking. I can also see him having a harsh management style. Absolutely, I can see that. So, yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. Anyway, new season, Formula One. What do we think? FP1. Max Verstappen. How many seconds is he going to win the Bahrain race by? 1 million? Actually, how long's a million seconds? How long's a million seconds, actually? It does look like Alpine are going to be towards the back, doesn't it? It's only looking that way. Did you see some interesting comments that I've seen? First of all was Lewis when asked about George and if he could take over the team and run the team in his absence. He was like, well, yeah, I don't know. And he said something at the end. He said, well, he's close to Toto. And what you might not know is George Russell spent the entire winter with Toto Wolff and his family, even staying at his house. The day of Lewis coming to see Toto to tell him the news about going to Ferrari, George Russell had been staying the night before and he'd left early that morning. And Lewis making that comment felt like a little sly dig towards him. And then George has been talking about the car and he made some very interesting statements. He said, Lewis got what he wanted. The cockpit was moved back. And something else, he said, Lewis has got what he's got what he wanted. And it seemed very interesting to me that he worded it like that. And I get the feeling that not all is not great in that camp. There's a bit of tension between those two. It feels like maybe George wasn't as happy with the changes. I don't know, but he said that the car's better, so I don't know. He said the cockpit's been moved back and we've got more Red Bull style side pods, but he said Lewis got what he wanted and it felt very catty. I don't know. The cockpit's been moved back, yeah, by 10 centimeters, I think it was. Lewis wasn't happy where it was. He said it was too close to the front axle. Thank you for the follow, Forstein, by the way. Yeah, so if they've got a competitive car, I could see those two really going at it this year. 1 million seconds is 12 days. So he's not going to be a million. He can't be 12 days ahead of the field. Can he? Max Verstappen in a spaceship? Maybe. Max is so far ahead, he's already won the first 2 races. Oh, God. I don't think Mercedes... I don't know about Mercedes. I don't know where they are. I really, really don't. It's going to be really interesting to see where they're at. Yeah, the Formula One race has already happened, guys. Max has already won. We're just living in the past. Max is living in the future. I agree, Thorne. I agree. Considering Lewis's experience, and that was something George mentioned as well. He said Lewis with his experience. So maybe it just seemed out of context, that thing. But it felt like with Lewis saying, "Oh yeah, George, you know, he's very close to Toto," it felt a bit catty. And then George saying, "Well, Lewis got what he wanted." It just, yeah, I agree that I think you've got to listen to Lewis's experience. The designers have got to make a car that they want to make and they think makes sense, but at the same time, they have to. The drivers are going to drive the car. They need to take their feedback on board as well. Yeah. So the medium tires that they're running, most of the cars are running right now, are actually the harder tires from last week. Joe Guan Yu's out there with bloody aero rakes on the car. Zhu saying his brake isn't working. Not what you want in a Formula One car going 200 miles an hour. I think Alpine are going to be towards the back, and I think that's going to be a real embarrassment. If Alpine are towards the back, that's going to be a serious embarrassment for a works team. So there's a very good chance they could be toward the back of the field. There's rumblings that Haas actually might be further up than people think. The ones I don't really know, McLaren, Aston Martin, and Mercedes, we don't really know. We think Red Bull's first and Ferrari's second. Yeah. I am considering covering a little bit of WEC. I've got a video planned to talk about WEC on the channel, just to make people aware of it. And then just sort of branch out a little bit. Very windy in the desert. Some of these cars, the Ferrari included, was massively affected by wind last year. They speak via Discord, really? I didn't know that. I don't know that much about WEC. I do watch it, but I'm not, admittedly, as invested as I am in Formula One, which I should be, really, because the racing is better. You know, and it's an interesting, really interesting sport, WEC. I just don't have as much time to commit to watch races that are 6 hours, 8 hours long. That's the main reason I don't watch it as much. There's nothing noticeable that I've seen so far from preseason testing. They have done a big document about all the upgrades, but that is a document covering the upgrades from last year rather than between preseason testing. There are small things, I think, but nothing huge. Rothgar, how you doing? Good morning. Give that a like, guys, if if you're that way inclined. Give it a cheeky like, give it a tickle. Ooh, a bit of a snap for Charles going into turn 4. Oof. Yeah, so these medium tyres would have been the C2s from last week, I think. And then the actual hard tyre that they're on will be the C1. The one thing I don't like is the fact that they don't have luminous numbers on the Mercedes like they did last year, which is annoying. You can determine which one is Lewis because he's got the yellow T-cam. But still, I'd much rather he had the yellow numbers as well. Also, Mercedes have said that one of the issues with their cars is bouncing. Not porpoising, but bouncing. They've been running their car really aggressively during testing, and it was bouncing quite a lot.
Subscription received. Apparently,
you may have seen that.
Red Captain.
And
Hadz.
This could be a problem if they're running it too low and it's going through the skid plate. But it's also obviously will be a problem for the drivers depending on how bad it is. So that's something to watch out for. Hey, J-Bet, thank you for the 25 months. Hamilton goes to the top of the timesheets for now. Again, we don't know what teams are running right now. Very early indications would suggest, though, that Ferrari and Mercedes won't be a million miles away from each other. I don't think. I think later on we're more likely to see some qualifying runs. It's 3 o'clock that I believe practice 2 is. Yeah, 3 o'clock is practice 2 and qualifying is at 4 o'clock tomorrow. So that's the closest time they're going to have to a qualifying time. So I think later on we're likely to see some qualifying runs. And I think in FP2. So I think that's when we're most likely to see a real indication of where the teams line up. They've talked about it a fair bit, J-Bear. Do you know what's frustrating to me? The press talk about this Horner thing, and I understand it's a story, but they go to him and they still ask questions about it, and to be fair, he said, I can't talk about it. He can say he's happy it's done and stuff, but all the information he can't talk about because it's all private. So they keep asking him the same questions, and he's like giving the same answers. Like, listen, I can't. Do you know what I mean? It bothers me that they keep asking Lewis about Ferrari, and they keep asking Charles Leclerc about Ferrari, and Toto about this. How many times can he explain how Lewis told him? Like, how many times? And how many times do they have to ask Charles, what's it going to be like having Lewis as a teammate? Yeah, it's going to be great. Like, I get that they're going to do it, but it's just, just relax. So, I think it's going to be close behind Red Bull. I think. My gut instinct is Red Bull, miles ahead, well, especially with Max. But then it's going to be close behind. Like Max again, we don't know what teams are running right now. Max is half a second ahead currently of Carlos Sainz's time, but it doesn't even look like he's trying. My biggest wish is that Red Bull had another driver that could at least challenge Max. So a bit like the Mercedes era, we know there was dominance in Mercedes. The only saving grace we had was that Rosberg and Hamilton were at least fighting each other. Whereas we're now in a situation where Max's own competition, at least last year, was just himself. The only competition Max had last year was himself. And I'm concerned that that's going to be the same this year because I'm just not sure if... Well, I know that Perez isn't on Max's level. And that's my worry. That's my biggest worry. Perez less than a tenth behind his teammate there. Assuming they're running the same engine modes and fuel and what have you. We haven't had a time from... I don't know what Verstappen means by that. Everything is miles off. No time from either of the two state cars or the two Williams just yet. I think... Where's Stroll? Stroll's currently in 7th. Alonso hasn't put in a time yet. Hey Dan, thank you for the 24 months.
A lovely 2 years.
Max obviously isn't happy with the car just yet. So there's a lot more to be had in that Red Bull. As Norris goes to P4. Ocon and Gasly. Oof, 12th and 13th. There's no way Magnussen and Hulkenberg are 4 seconds off the pace, though, are they, sir? I actually like the look of the Mercedes out on track from the front angle. I think it looks nice. Not as much from the side view, but from the front angle, it looks good. Hamilton 2/10 down on Verstappen's time through the middle sector. He was slightly up through the first, but then he's lost a couple tenths in the middle. Hamilton goes P2 with a purple third sector. Only 2 thousandths off. So we gained 2 tenths in the last sector. But thank you very much, Dan. I know people in Haas are wondering whether they're going to be a bit of a surprise, but the Haas, it doesn't look great, does it? Red Bull are going to go up a gear and they'll be ahead of everyone. I don't think that's a doubt at all. The interest really is seeing where everyone else is. Everyone shakes up with Aston, Ferrari, McLaren. I don't think any of the McLaren drivers have put in a particularly quick time just yet. The other thing to consider, and this is quite important, is Bahrain's a bit of an outlier track. It's not got any fast speed corners, really. It's all medium speed, slow speed. And that doesn't suit the McLaren. It's not something they were particularly strong with last year. They were strong in high speed. So even if McLaren are bad here, for instance, it doesn't mean they're going to be bad in Jeddah next week or other circuits. It's a bit of an outlier track, so it doesn't, the order at this race doesn't mean it'll be the order at other races. And so that's pretty important to remember. In other news, I'm seeing this stake out on track, and do you know what? The livery's starting to grow on me. The livery's starting to grow on me. Also, I'm lying. I hate it. One of the big things that Mercedes have tried to improve this year apparently was drag. And they've got a bit more juice out of their engine from various reliabilities and reliability changes and what have you. So maybe. Yeah, no, I don't like the livery. It's bloody horrible. It still looks just as bad as it did last week. Russell's just gone P1 with 33.7. Obviously, these are all running on medium tyres at the minute, so. Verstappen now purple first sector, just going to dunk on purple middle sector, going to dunk on everyone. Verstappen purple, Alonso purple first sector. Yeah, Verstappen goes 0.2 quicker. If Mercedes were 0.2 off Red Bull in the first race, I think they'd be really happy, honestly. If Mercedes were 0.2 off Verstappen, they would be, I reckon they'd be chuffed. What's this lap time from Alonso? He's a 10th down in the middle sector. Purple in the first. Yeah, this is the thing. Mercedes at testing felt as though they had good race pace, but their one lap pace wasn't great. And Ferrari's race pace seemed to be very strong. So yeah, it's quite a hard one to judge. Smart people than me will have data on the long runs that teams complete over the next couple days. And so they'll have all the data of the laps and we'll be able to compare what everyone's doing. Aston Martin looks really good out on track, though. They've made a few changes to that side pod inlet. Someone was asking about upgrades. That side pod inlet has become a little bit more refined compared to what they had at testing. Big old lockup from the Haas. Big old lockup. Max complaining of upshifts and downshifts. The season's back, everyone. How many times do we hear Max saying that the upshifts and downshifts were bad last year? How many times? So many times. It was like a regular thing. He'd be like, oh yeah, upshifts are bad, as he went half a second quicker than anyone. Yeah, I'm really struggling with the downshifts. Oh, are you? Yeah, you're 0.7 quicker. Yeah, cool. Could be any number of things. It could be software mapping. It could be the way that the gearbox is designed, because it's obviously a problem they've had over a long time. I could say this was a problem they had last year. Could be some sort of syncing issue. It could be anything. I'm not 100% sure, to tell you the truth. I don't know enough about the engine development side of things to really know. Steak Sauber. Ugh. Bloody horrible, innit? Horrible colour. Bloody horrible colour. 250,000 time. What? What? Again, we've got some times on the board here, but it's completely impossible to judge because I doubt even now Red Bull have unleashed their full potential. They've not reached their final form. Only in qualifying, I think, will we see their real form, or maybe we'll see it when they do some qualifying runs later this afternoon. But if the gap was only 0.2, I'd be very happy. If the gap from Max, which we believe is getting P1, and to the second car was 0.2, I'd be happy, because that would be an improvement on last year. Oh, yeah, well, yeah. Like, Max complaining about his upshifts and downshifts is all relative, because for him, it might be bad, but for anyone else, it might not. It might be negligible, but he feels it, so he's complaining about it, but we're probably talking maybe a negligible feeling or difference in time, but for him, a perfectionist, he probably feels it. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, if Red Bull were only 0.2 ahead of either Mercedes, Ferrari, or whoever it is in second, that would mean we had the potential of a good race and maybe a good season. So that would be, that would be top tier. Because it was 0.3 to Ferrari last season at Bahrain, and we know how that season went. So, if it's more than 0.3, then we should start to be concerned, because that means that the gap's bigger, and that's a worry. So hopefully that isn't the case. Yeah, I mean, everyone seems to think Ferrari is second quickest. Much like Mercedes, though, Ferrari think they've got a better race car than qualifying car. Last year, they had a really good qualifying car, but their race car wasn't as good, and they had loads of tyre deg and what have you, but they believe they've got a better race car this year, so we might not see that in qualifying, but I'm expecting them to be strong in the race. Everyone believes they're the second quickest team, Ferrari. I just think there's a couple of unknowns. I think Aston is an unknown. Mercedes is an unknown because I don't think either of them showed as much as some of the other teams. So, yeah. I think Ferrari might be second quickest, but it might not be completely cut and dry. I don't know, man. We'll see. 24 races this year. So 24 races. We had 22 last year because China and Imola didn't happen. It's a lot. It's a lot. If Mercedes do well this weekend, I wonder if someone will challenge that front wing of theirs. Some weird goings on down at Mercedes. Yeah, it does look like it's not carbon anymore, doesn't it? But I'm not. If it's metal rather than carbon, does that work to the rules? I'm not sure. It doesn't look like it's carbon anymore. So I'm not really sure. Is that allowed? I'm not sure. They're making some changes to the floor, or they're doing something under the floor of George Russell's car. Hmm. This configuration of the Mercedes suspension is interesting. They've got this panel on the side that allows them to change the suspension arm to give them more anti-dive or less anti-dive. Anti-dive basically controls the dive of the car under braking. Mercedes has got a panel that allows them to change to two quite extreme configurations, which is quite, you don't really see that. But they tried the second configuration in testing, and the drivers said they didn't like it. It made the car feel worse. And Mercedes said, we thought that was going to be the case, but it's nice to know our simulations, came up with the same solution, like the same answer. Well, that's a huge thing to have on your car. You've got it on the car. It's a change in chassis. You've got to have two mounting points on the chassis, potentially extra weight, just to put something on the car that you already thought was going to be worse. I mean, I don't really understand it. It seems like it's only going to run in the lower configuration now because the drivers said they didn't like the higher configuration. So that's all a bit weird, isn't it? Don't really understand it. Piastri's just gone quickest with a soft lap time. 33.1. Is Norris on the soft tire as well? No, Norris is still on the mediums. He's pitting. He's pitting anyway. Norris currently in P9, hasn't really shown everything just yet. Based on the times we've currently got, McLaren, Aston Martin, Ferrari, and Mercedes are pretty close if these times are to be taken on face value. The front wing, not the front wing, the wing that McLaren have got, like on the side pod of their car, is actually kind of reminiscent of what Mercedes had out of necessity with the wing they had above their side pods, because it housed the crash structure. Kind of interesting, really, that they went down that route with a wing. It's not as big, it's not as bulky, it's a lot more slender, but it's interesting. Here's Gasly in the boat that is the Alpine. I'm just watching this Gasly onboard just to see how this Alpine looks. I wasn't impressed with it during testing. He was 8 tenths down in the first sector, but that is being compared to a soft tyre runner from Piastri. Yeah, Alpine are just... They don't seem like they're anywhere. That can't be right. He's 2.5 seconds off. He must be running more fuel. He must be. This must be a longer fuel run. He wouldn't be that much slower. It must be higher fuel. He is using DRS though. Bruno Famine didn't look particularly happy there though. Norris is out there currently on a soft tyre run as well. He's gone green in the first sector. There's a Mercedes ahead of him. I don't know if they're going to move out of the way. Yeah, they did. Norris a 10th up on the time set by Piastri. Bouncing through turn 12. You can hear it. You can hear it scrubbing. Yeah, the Alpine must have been doing a race sim. They wouldn't have been that slow. I think Norris is going to go quickest with his current time on the soft tyres. 2 tenths quicker than Piastri. I suspect that'll be beaten quite easily when other teams go onto the soft tyre, though. Helmet cam looks really good from Lando's point of view here. Really good viewpoint. I don't think that's a terrible time, you know, from either McLaren driver, because I think that the delta's meant to be like 5 tenths or 6 tenths of a second between the mediums and the softs. And so that's actually a pretty good... I think that's an okay lap. I mean, I could be wrong though. Obviously, they're nowhere near a qualifying time at the minute. Hadouken! Rain, thank you very much for the YouTube sub. Appreciate it. So. Oh, hello. Yuki Tsunoda putting in those laps. He's 3 tenths up in the first sector. He's absolutely going for it. I get the feeling they're on a higher... a higher engine mode. A much fruitier push lap here from Yuki Tsunoda. Hamilton does a 33.3 on the medium. I don't know if that was a fresh set. 4 tenths off Norris's time. Yuki Tsunoda just lost a load of time in the middle sector. He was 3 tenths up in the first, and he ended up being a 10th almost down in the second sector. He lost quite a bit of time there. Good morning, Alibond. 3 tenths down, Tsunoda. See what Ricciardo can do when he puts a soft tyre on. There's more time in that, though, because Yuki lost a lot of time through the middle sector. He's got more time in him. Yeah, McLaren. 1-2. Oh, George. George using that runoff area to great effect. Yeah, McLaren 1-2. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, it's a good lap from Lando. Ricciardo, P1, but we didn't see it. I didn't see it because we're watching Lance Stroll lock up. Jesus Christ, that's a lockup from Lance Stroll. Bloody hell. So Ricciardo goes a little bit faster than Norris. Yeah, it depends what they want to run. Different teams run different things, Ali. FP2 is likely to have quali runs in it because Free Practice 2 takes place at roughly within an hour the same time that qualifying will. And the race. So it's more representative. So they'll tend to do more quali runs in FP2, I think. And then FP3 tomorrow will definitely be longer runs. FP1 is just a mix of what they need to get done, really. Just very much depends what the team needs to get through from last week. Max talking something about engine modes there. I reckon Daniel Ricciardo could have a good season this year. There's something about, I don't know, there's something about it that I think maybe he's going to have a decent season. Perez needs to have a good season. Guys, imagine if Red Bull were actually 10th and 11th. Obviously, they're not going to be, but make for a more interesting race, wouldn't it? Yeah, the RB looks great. It really does. They're playing down expectations, though. Like, Danny Rick thinks they're in the midfield. They don't think they're fighting for podiums, but it's hard to know because I feel like maybe they showed their hand a little bit more in testing than the other teams. Like, we don't really know what Lando and Oscar were running in terms of fuel, though. Hadouken! When I say RB, I obviously mean, you know, Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. How can you be confused at a team called RB? You know. Thank you very much for the sub. How can you be confused? There's nothing confusing about it. Just to be clear, the team is legally registered as Racing Bulls, but they need to be known as RB. And I want to make it even clearer that RB doesn't stand for Racing Bulls, and it doesn't stand for Red Bull. It's just RB, despite the fact that they're registered as Racing Bulls legally, and they're owned by Red Bull, which both have the letters RB. It doesn't stand for either of those two. Absolutely not. It's just RB. What don't you understand about that? What? It's simple, isn't it? I don't know why they treat us like morons. No, you've got to just say RB. It doesn't stand for anything. Of course it does. It stands for Racing Bulls. That's your registered company name. Like, your parent company's called Red Bull. Like, no, RB doesn't stand for anything. Just call us RB. No, bog off. It's just so frustrating, isn't it? Why do they treat us? Why do they treat us this way? You know? Why do they think we're so foolish? But why? Well, it's just a bloody cash grab sponsorship, isn't it? That just ruins the integrity of that team completely. Absolutely ruins it, but hey ho. Now, currently, Haas are at the bottom of the times with a gap of 4.6 to 5 seconds. Surely they're running higher fuel, longer runs, right? They're not going to be 4.5 seconds off the pace, like, obviously. Even though we do expect them to be towards the back. You know, they're not going to be that far toward the back. Right? $20 more months. James Vowell's not giving anything away there. Yeah, I was expecting Williams to be a little bit higher. Verstappen did a quicker time as well, but not much quicker than Russell's time. They're pretty much identical times on the medium tyre. Again, hard to know how they compare on fuel loads and stuff, but Leclerc, Verstappen, and Russell within, 3 thousandths of a second. So that's pretty interesting. It does pop up, Jay Parrish, from time to time. It flicks around and shows you the tyres. You've just got to catch it. It'll show you what tyre they're on and how many laps it's done. It's just not on permanently. Well, that is very, very true, Wolves. Like, the fact that 105% rule or 107% rule needed to be introduced tells you that there was problems with people not, Max going past George. Why are we seeing that replay? Oh, George getting feisty with Max there. That's a bit interesting. Formula One has a 100%, 107% rule. And what this means is cars at the back of the grid have to produce a time within 107% of the top time to be enabled to enter the race. If they don't have a time within that, then dispensation needs to be given by the FIA to allow them to race. More often than not, there's very good reason for it, like car issues, whatever it might be. And the FIA usually go, yeah, obviously that's fine. But back in back in the early days of Formula One, or earlier days of Formula One, there would be huge gaps between teams because the development wasn't as strict as it is now. There'd be huge, huge gaps. And so they needed a way to make sure that cars weren't going to be a liability on track. Yeah, Daniel Ricciardo on pole, Yuki Tsunoda fourth. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that? Be wild, wouldn't it? Ocon saying the car's inconsistent. I need to see a better lap from Logan Sargent as well. I don't understand why he's so far off Albon at the minute. Again, they could be running different plans. I hope for Haas's sake that they're running different plans. What the advert? What the hell? I really, really hope that Haas are running just a different plan and working on their long runs. Because if they're not, they're in big trouble. Do you mean that you want an investigation, Mocha? Because there isn't a current investigation going on. You might want one, but... Alonso did his quickest time on the mediums. He hasn't run the soft tyres yet. Don't worry, I don't believe Alonso or Stroll is actually down in 14th position. They just haven't gone out yet. On the soft tyre. A lot of teams might not go out on the softs because FP2... later on today is a more representative time to get qualifying runs in. It's cooler, heading into the night, more representative of when qualifying will happen. So I actually don't think that many teams will go out on the soft tyre. Well, yeah, I mean, Zach Brown has certainly been... complaining about it for years. So what you're saying is if they do well, people will complain even more and louder. And you're right, they will. This year they're taking Red Bull's front suspension and their rear suspension, which is allowed. They also take the Honda engine and gearbox, which Red Bull also do. And they're moving to the Milton Keynes compound where Red Bull is as well. It's a bit close, that, isn't it? It's a bit too close, I think, because they're moving to the same compound and it's owned by the same company. I think that is a bit of a step too far. We'll see. Right. Alonso's on a new set of mediums right now, a 10th down in the first sector. Verstappen's on a fresh set of mediums as well, I believe. No, he's not. That's a used set. Let's just see where Alonso filters in here. He's only 1.5 tenths down, and he's on the medium tyre, not the soft. Which is... it's pretty good going. Just over 3 tenths slower. Which is good. Fresh set of mediums, but that's good. It's a good lap. Max will gain more than 3 tenths on a set of soft tyres. I reckon at least half a second. Well, the thing is, the stink with Racing Point wasn't that they shared stuff with Mercedes. It was the fact that they'd essentially copied Mercedes' car, which is allowed. You can't stop someone looking at someone else's car and copying them, but then they were also using Mercedes engines and gearbox, stuff like that. Racing Bulls are not doing anything illegal. They're allowed to take the front suspension off another team and rear suspension. That's perfectly allowable. They're not doing anything wrong. I think it's the fact that we've got two teams in Formula One owned by the same company, using the same parts, and now essentially moving into the same, or, right next to the other team's headquarters. It's like, they're not going to be in the same building. It's going to be a separate building, but it's on the same, I don't know what you'd call it, like complex as the Red Bull HQ. Well, the rules basically dictate that they can't do that, Adam. So the rules dictate that there's basically a list of things, very complicated list of things that you can take from other teams, suspension being one of them. But all of the aero parts have to be designed solely by that team. And Formula One is very strict on that. The worry for people is that, I suppose the worry is that the relationship is too close. I don't think there's ever going to be a situation where Red Bull and their sister teams share aero data or anything, because that's highly illegal. They're not going to do that. But that's what people are worried about. The problem is how it's all controlled. I think that the control over the wind tunnel time and stuff like that is actually very strict. I'm not sure, but it's possible that the FIA have like direct access to people's wind tunnels so they can see what's being done at any given time. I could be wrong though. But I mean, if the Racing Bull turned up and it was an exact copy of Red Bull and they were in the same HQ running the same it would obviously be, no, Michael, something's not right. Obviously. And then it would just be investigated and they'd be found guilty. Like, it's just, yeah. They're not going to do that. People have conspiracy theories, but I do think that one company shouldn't own two teams. There's no reason for it. Let another company come in. And Christian Horner was quite clear, we've been good for the sport. We've given all these jobs to AlphaTauri, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but another company would do the same. One company shouldn't own two teams in Formula One. It's different having a partnership. Haas are partnered with Ferrari and Aston are partnered with Mercedes and all this. Like, there shouldn't be two teams owned by one company. I mean, I'd welcome Aldi Red Bull. That's what they should have called it. That would have been great. Massive sponsorship by like Aldi or Lidl. And then it could just be like Aldi Red Bull. I'd welcome that. I'd absolutely welcome that. But that's not what's happened. Clean up in corner 3, that sort of stuff. Yes, this what Dan has said there is also a concern. There is a concern that people are worried that Racing Bulls could be used as a team to test things in the wind tunnel that Red Bull would then utilize, or test theories via their team. People are worried about this connection, essentially. But I think it'd be incredibly difficult to do that and get away with it. But, well, the whole Audi thing might not even go ahead. The main guy that wanted to bring Audi into Formula One has left the job at Audi now, or he's leaving. And so there is a little bit of concern that maybe Audi might backtrack on this. I mean, they shouldn't really, because they've been spending money developing an engine. But it won't be the first time that an engine's been developed for Formula 1 and never utilised, so... Yeah, someone would leak it, there'd be a whistleblower, there'd be evidence, there'd be a trail of data. You'd never hold on to that information, and you'd be sanctioned beyond belief for something like that. So it's just not worth it. And let's be honest, Red Bull have got Adrian Newey. What the bloody hell do they need extra wind tunnel time for? They don't need to use their second team to get ahead, do they? They don't need that at all. They got super brain Adrian Newey, the last airbender. I was born in the air, molded by it. You know, he sees the air particles in a way that us mere mortals, just can't. Must be such a burden going through life seeing all the air particles, you know? Must be such a burden. Yeah, it does. Oh, that would be horrible, Mocha. But yeah, that would also be a burden on him. Max has been complaining about downshifts and upshifts all session. Again, it's not an abnormal thing. He complained about it a lot last year and then still blitzed everyone. It's just a common theme with this engine or gearbox that they're running, I guess. Dark Knight or Dark Knight Rises? It's the Dark Knight, I think. I think that's my favourite. People were claiming that the Red Bull was like some sort of tyre whisperer. That they're basically Red Bull had next to no tyre wear during the testing. People come up with some things. Obviously, they can have good tyre wear, but they can't just make the tyres last indefinitely. They've got no tyre degradation. Okay. Oh, dear. What do we make of FP1 then? What do we make of it? What do we make of it? Danny Rick is going to start pole position on Sunday? Is that what we're taking from this? Norris, Piastri with good times on the soft tyres. None of the other teams ran soft tyres, so it's kind of hard to judge. You know, all the top teams aren't where they're likely going to be. You know, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren. Well, McLaren might be towards the front, but yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. FP2 is definitely the one to watch. That's going to be the interesting one. FP3, FP2 even, is going to be on at 3 o'clock. Let me just make sure. I believe it's 3 o'clock. Yes. 3 o'clock is FP2. That's going to be the interesting one because I think teams will show a bit more of their true pace there, especially on qualifying runs. So that's where we'll get a better indication of what's going on, I think. And I will be back for FP2. At some point, I do need to do my F1 fantasy drivers. We've got a day left before it closes, so I need to do my my fantasy picks. I will do that either today or... Well, I have to do it today, really. So, yeah. Thank you very much for joining me. I will be back at about 2:30 on Twitch and YouTube for FP2. Join me then. Until then, have a lovely afternoon. And I will see you in a couple of hours. Goodbye.